All right, last Tim Kaine video for today. NPC reactions.
Hi everybody, it's me, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Today I want to talk about NPC reaction.
Yeah, go for it.
This comes from a question from Alice Little 1865, who asked, can you make a video maybe on the topic of NPCs and companions? What I mean is how to create character reactions when they interact with the world or not. For example, how all the companions in New Vegas have some kind of reaction when on a mission or part of the map, or a player choice or faction. The same could be applied to a tabletop RPG when the DM creates a character that the players have in their party or not. How would that character react to the interactions and development of the story, and how do you prepare for that?
Oh, God. That shit scares me. I mean, we're gonna have to do that for Golden Chronicles, right? In some cases, but it's like you have to put so much thought and so much organization behind it. And for a game like New Vegas, or something, you have a list of all the quests you have, and you have a list of quests that probably, like, you can't get this this NPC until halfway, this companion until halfway in the main quest, right? So you at least know that half of the main quests you don't have to write anything special for, but then you have to write everything special for, like, side quests or for the rest of the main quest. So you probably would just pick moments that the NPCs react to and then just write lines for all those, and you make a new companion. You have to fill out that whole Excel spreadsheet list of lines another time too. Organization, a lot of content, a lot of work. And that's oftentimes what takes the most amount of time to make for a game from, like, the data side, is just filling in content. Not easy to write games. It's not easy.
I want to break this into two parts because at least for a video game, the complicated thing is how to set it up so you can do the reaction. And then I'll talk very briefly on
That's a good point.
What things you might want to react to. Also, I call this NPC reaction. It is commonly used for companion reaction, since companions are with you, are following you around, and they see a lot of what you do. But I called this NPC reaction because you can really use it for anything in any character in the game who's not the player.
Yeah, it's like, you might, Bethesda games, actually, older Bethesda games, like if you're wearing if you're crouching, they'll mention that you shouldn't be stealing from them, or if you're wearing like a thief's guild gear, they're going to mention that. So I'd prefer the companions to not yap at everything. I agree with that, though. I think that it's like there's a middle ground. You don't want them yapping at everything, but you want them to actually feel like they're part of the journey. I think a good example is like earlier acts of Baldur's Gate 3. It felt like there was a lot of companion interaction with the world, and they felt like they were kind of part of the same team. I have my own problems with that, but later then in like Act 3, you could tell that they probably had to speed up development a little bit, and a lot of the companions just don't have reactions to things. They're just standing back there like cardboard units during quests. And you lose the immersiveness, and you lose kind of that rolling story that's being built with these characters and the relationship that you have with them. Especially games where companions treat you as a dumb fucking idiot. Oh, you should touch that shit and spin it. It seems like we have to solve this puzzle by aligning the statues. Stop! Stop it! Shut up! Ah!
We've all played games where the NPCs react to things you do
here in
and
the office.
say. My games all do that. To me, that's one of the just wonderful, beautiful things about an RPG is reacting to what the player does.
Yes. I mean, that's the entire point.
A big chunk of that reaction comes from having non-player characters.
It's choice. It's feedback, right? It's if you just make choices, but the game doesn't change in any meaningful way, then you could argue that you're not making a choice, right? If the choice has the same result, it's the illusion of choice, right? If the choice is the same result, you didn't make a choice. And if it just led to like a different dialogue line, and that illusion gets broken, it's gone. It can't be brought back. You can't remember the magic if you just realize that, oh, this just changes one line.
Say, I saw what you did. I saw what you said. It's fun. The two ways
A great example, sorry, I keep pausing, but a great example is like Mass Effect 3 has a whole lot of choice. I know people feel differently about Mass Effect 3. I think the game's good, but it has a lot of choices that come back to haunt you, right? Like, did you save this person in Mass Effect 1? Which choice did you make in Mass Effect 2 for this character? Did you convince this person and this person, or did you not? And that's built up over those like 80 to 100 hours that you're playing through the Mass Effect trilogy if you play all the content. And I think that's really where it becomes memorable. Like, what happened with this character? Oh, I had to do this, this, and this, and this. Mass Effect 3 was a great payoff. I don't think that the very end was that bad. Not in hindsight. Like, how else would you expect to end it? I think the ending slides were good. It wasn't horrible, but the payoff, especially with like characters and factions, I think was top notch with Mass Effect 3. And ending aside, the characters and factions were, I think, pretty good. Yeah, okay, pre-remaster was bad. I agree. And I don't like the green ending, the synthesis. I don't want to turn this into a synthesis ending reaction, but synthesis ending in Mass Effect 3 sucks ass. It's stupid. People need to stop harping on about how good it is. It's not the middle ground. It's not good. You're removing people's humanity. Stop it. Don't choose green. Choose red or blue if you do anything. No green. Don't green. Green people can leave my chat.
We did that in Arcanum. I'm going to talk about the method we used. The two ways we did it in Arcanum was in dialogues and in scripts. I have videos on Arcanum dialogue and Arcanum scripting. They're linked below. At the end of this video, though, I'm going to talk about a better way of doing it. I shouldn't say better. A way more efficient way, which your programmers may like better.
Okay.
And you may go, well, why didn't you do that in Arcanum? The simple answer, which is what I always say, is time and money. We didn't think of it because I was trying to create the simplest system.
Sometimes it's like hindsight. It's like, oh shit, we would have saved a lot of money if we had done this thing. Oops.
So that non-programmers could script. So I went with the very simplest system I could think of. If it had caused problems with our frame rate or our memory use, I would have gone back and changed it. But it didn't. So that's the frustration I get from programmers going, well, we have to do it this way because it's the most efficient. Do we use it enough to have that inefficiency matter in any way? For Arcanum, the answer was no. Did we have frame rate and memory issues? Yes. Did they come from NPC reaction? No. So it's always a discussion you want to have with your programmers. Is the optimization you're doing really important right now? Because the time you spend on it is time we could be doing other things.
Exactly. The time the money spent could be spent, but you need to optimize that. If you're just wasting time adding something small into the game that doesn't matter, or optimizing something that doesn't need to be optimized, you could be, what would I rather do? Have the programmers spend a week fixing a small little lag issue that happens when you pause the game? Like the game pauses for a half a second before you can actually press like a button because we're running some scripts or something? Or would I rather them work on a new feature or rewrite this feature that needs to be rewritten? Obviously the latter. Hey, Ahmed, Fallout Dude, indeed he is. The GOAT, Tim Cain.
Anyway, I'll discuss that alternate way at the end. So, the way Arcanum dialogue worked is every line, whether it was spoken by the player character or a non-player character, can potentially call out to a script. That script could set a variable, or in Outer Worlds, it could actually call out to an NPC dialogue. So you've probably played some dialogues there where you were talking and all of a sudden one of your companions says,
yes,
hey, blah, blah, blah. Because
I like
we
shit
could,
like
in
that.
the middle of your dialogue, check to see if you had a companion there and do they want to respond to this line? Boom, they step in and do it. Those call outs are really useful for the companion to interrupt your dialogue and react. Setting a variable, though, lets you have that NPC, companion or NPC, react later. And I'll talk about that.
And that is good. I like when the companions react in the moment, but I almost love more because it surprises me when, 10 hours down the line, something small I said comes back to the topic, right? People don't like my hot take about Starfield in this, but Starfield did that well. Starfield had a lot of small dialogue that you didn't think meant anything, but then would come back to be part of the topic again later, for like companion quests. I think that was a good part. I think that they should keep that for for Elder Scrolls 6.
Similarly, scripts just all by themselves can also do the same things. In Arcanum, scripts could be put on an event that was happening in the world. It could be when the player picks up an item.
Mm-hmm.
It could be when the player kills someone or some creature. It could be when the player finishes a quest. It could be when the story state gets advanced, because we kept a numerical story state and went from 2 to 3. And that means you're now in Act 3 of what the narrative designers have considered the story state. All of these things trigger script calls that you can hook a script to and say, when this thing happens, I want to be called. Then you can do something when that script is called. You can set a variable, which you can check later, or you can check right away. Like for companions, what we often did is we would set a variable, and then later on, when the player entered their home or their ship or someplace that was, quote, safe, when the map transition happened, that companion might go, hey, can we talk? It might even be just when you entered a town.
Yeah.
You know, they know, well, you're now in a town location.
Yeah, and you don't want that happening like mid-battle or something. I can't think of a game off the top of my head that did that, but I know that there have been some that do that, where it's like you're mid-battle and this companion's like, hey, can we talk about something when we get some time? Sir, now is not the best time. So yeah, waiting until there's like a safe zone or until there's a specific flag in an area, I think is a good way to do it. Smart way to do it.
There's a script callback for that. The companion would go, oh, I've set this variable. I know we're in a town. I'm going to tell my player leader, hey, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
For NPCs that weren't companions, this was often done on their heartbeat, which they got at the max every 2 seconds, and then the farther away they were from the player, the slower their heart rate was. They would then check these variables, and they saw that, oh, I have this variable that means I want to talk to the player by jumping to this start location in my dialogue.
Does he have a video where he talks about what he's calling this heartbeat? Did they have a variable like tick rate for certain events on NPCs or companions that were based on their distance to the player? That sounds very interesting. I'd love to see what that meant and how they utilized that. Huh.
One reason you want to set a variable rather than just call into dialogue and force it to start is when that script that's going to check that variable is called, it may want to check that the player is not in combat, that the player is not in dialogue with another NPC, that there are no enemies nearby, and that maybe none of these things have happened for the last 30 seconds. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like as soon as you finish talking with one person, the NPC goes, I need to talk to you. Or as soon as you finish combat, you're like, phew, and you want to loot, and the NPC's like, no, I want to talk to you.
Yeah, it's unimmersive and it breaks the pacing. I think that doing it in safe zones is pretty good, because you do want to gamify some things so that players can expect certain things. It's kind of weird if you make everything immersive and realistic, the game might actually become a little bit less satisfying or understandable. So think of like Mass Effect dialogue, where you know that everything on like the left side of dialogue is optional, or they specifically say optional dialogue. And this is this is a gamification. This breaks the immersion, but because it's understandable, players enjoy that more because they're not afraid that what they're going to say is going to push forward the conversation. And that takes a lot of care and skill to set up, as opposed to the Colden Chronicles is a pretty shitty example for this because we don't do that well with like Spoon, right? You never know when something you say is going to move the conversation forward, and that's actually bad design. It doesn't work. It's poor. We've had feedback on that, and I feel the same way with that feedback. So this is something that we've learned about narrative design that I don't think I knew beforehand, and now that I do, I can write that in the future. So
often we put a delay in
pacing.
However, once you check and it's the NPC, has that variable set, meaning they saw or heard, because you can check line of sight and things. They saw or heard what you did, and then finally it was a good time to talk to you. Boom. It jumps to that particular line in their dialogue, and they say something. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they liked what they saw. Maybe they're demanding something of you. Maybe they're going to tell you you're horrible. I'm going to leave the party. By the way, the reason this is fun to do in a dialogue is that's the perfect time to check the player's leadership skills or dialogue skills.
True.
And maybe if that skill is high enough, the player can say, no, please don't leave. And you can say, okay, but a counter is set. So that next time the player does something bad, you need a higher skill to prevent them from leaving. And eventually, if you keep doing it, the skill will become too high and they're going to leave. But that's what I love about that.
Yeah, I actually like that. I don't remember if Outer Worlds had that system, but I know that Starfield also had that system where you could fuck up and do something that like made one of your companions angry, and you would have to convince them to. It was a little bit. It was a little bit like a bad relationship, like an abusive relationship where you were like gaslighting them that no, it was a mistake. It's not going to happen again. Don't worry. I'll never do that again. But I did like that you could make them angry, and if you did that too many times, or you promised them that it wouldn't happen again, and then you did it again, that they would leave permanently. I thought that was a cool mechanic that I don't see often enough in games with companions that should be explored more, because most games, your companions just inherently agree with, especially modern games, agree with every single thing you do, and you can't piss them off. Or they will just not be happy, but they'll still stay with you and fight with you and everything. And I'd like to see more games where you have those hard lines being set between what can and can't happen. Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous was very, very good with this, where your companions had alignments. And if you did something that disagreed with their alignment heavily, they would leave. They might even fight you to the death. So I like that a lot. And I like that whole system where your companions actually have their own lives, their own purposes, their own beliefs, their own lines in the stand about what they can or won't or will or won't do. Not a lot of games do this, and I would like to see more of it.
So that's in general how we handled NPC and companion reaction in Arcanum. There's a better way. It's more efficient. Event handlers. An event handler is when the thing happens, the player kills something,
Yeah.
the quest finishes, an event is thrown. And this is something that happens in code. When you throw an event, the event has a title like, let's say a creature was killed. The data is attached to that event. What creature is it? Who killed me?
Yeah.
When and where did it happen? These are all things that are attached to the event, and then it's just thrown out into the event system. The events can also have a time. Should things immediately listen for this, or should this event go into the queue of events and not be handled for 30 seconds or a minute or a day? You can do whatever you want. What's cool about that is the system that knows the event happened doesn't know or care about who wants to know about it.
It's very malleable. It's a really nice system when he's explaining this. You can just grab that data when you want it, if you want it, right? And maybe a character has a reaction to that, but he's on a cooldown for reactions, so it just gets discarded because it's been too soon since one. You don't want like a character after every single combat or every single enemy being killed having to say something snarky about that NPC getting killed, right? Jeez. Dragon's Dogma. Wolves hunt in packs arisen. Okay? This is what this system that Tim's describing would have resolved. Now it's memey. It is, but it's also really fucking annoying to have to hear about enemy weaknesses every single time I fight an enemy, even if I fought that enemy a million times. I don't want to hear it.
Also, with an event system, because you're not directly calling those things, you don't know who cares about it. It also may be that multiple things want to hear it. Events can be, when a listener hears an event, they can sometimes choose to consume it, so no one else can handle it. And that's for events like, well, only one person needs to handle this. You don't want something to happen and have all your companions all shout, I need to talk to you. It's like, it's enough for one of them to go.
Yeah, but in in a dialogue or something, you might want to cue those reactions to you kick a child into a pool of lava. Awesome. your companions probably all want to say something about that, inevitably. So you just cue those reactions, but you don't have it consume, right? So once it runs out, then it discards that after it's been said. Or if you only want, one character of yours to react after a battle, you just have that person, a random individual consume it. It's a really good system. It's a very good system.
Hey, why'd you do that? So they consume the event. For some events, they don't get consumed. If you have 5 different systems that want to know that event happened, they can all hear it. They can all listen to it. One thing that's great about that is if you're doing end slides, which I love in my RPGs.
Same.
End slides are perfect because they can just listen to whatever event you plan to make a slide for. Oh, you killed this boss. Oh, you killed everybody in the town.
Leave a slide for that.
They're listening to events, possibly keeping counters. And then when the game ends and you decide to do these end slides, you have all the data you need to know what end slides you want to show. What I love about this is, like I said, the event creator is usually a programmer. Not always, and I'll talk about that. It's usually a programmer. They don't know and they don't care who wants to listen to the event. It may be other programmers who are doing things with the event. It may be designers. It may be audio. We've had several things where an audio person would like, hey, I'd like to know when this happens so I can make a sound effect, or I can have an NPC say something. Don't jump into dialogue. They just say something like, whoa, that was crazy, or oh, look at that view. We can do that. If an NPC wants to react, they can listen for the event and then check that conditions are good for them to start a conversation. And if it's not, they can throw their own event to try again later. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a companion, Bob, and Bob hates it when cysty pigs are killed. Okay,
Damn it, Bob.
Whenever a creature's killed, they throw an event, saying, here's me, here's my killer, here's when and where it happened. Bob listens for that event, and when he gets it, he goes, was this a cysty pig who died, and was it the player character who killed them? If so, can I have seen or heard this event? If, let's say the killer
I think you could have an array, you could do even just a quick line trace between companions or NPCs within a certain radius, and say, does this trace hit or does it fail? Just do a quick, eye check based on a visibility trace or something, and then just say, am I that person? No, there's a lot of. It's very scalable. It's very malleable. It's a really, 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 really good system, and I kind of want to recreate it in a prototype. I kind of want a prototype trying to remake the system that he's describing. I feel like I could do it in a few days. Not week. Well, it depends on how much features there are to it, but
the player, Bob can just
it sounds great.
Do an audio, we call it chatter, and go, oh God, no, that poor cysty pig.
Yeah.
He just hates seeing cysty pigs killed.
I mean, you could put time limits on that being said again. You could put global limits on something like that. So that way you don't have too many of those happening at once. You could put limits based on chapters or something. It's so good, so tempting. My friends was telling me a lot about a game where a late game gets really laggy because the early game places they take over will calc taxes or something. They can need a lot of taxes to calculate, so it gets bulky. What the fuck? Taxes?
But if it was the player, Bob will now respond by setting up his own event, and I'll tell you why. So this is something a designer would have created. He makes his own event, maybe called Bob Sees Player Kill Cysty Pig.
Yeah, where you find him in his room and he's crying or something, and you have to convince him that it was a mistake, or if you can't, he'll leave, whatever.
It's got its own data for whatever Bob wants to store about that. And he sets it for 30 seconds from now. Why does he have a new event? Because you don't want Bob to initiate dialogue the second the exact moment the player kills the cysty pig.
You might.
It interrupts. It's he's probably still in combat. But if that was the final cysty pig, that would be you killed it, immediately Bob's like, I need to talk to you right now. You want to loot things, you need to take stock, you may need to heal.
Yeah.
So he sets the new event to happen in 30 seconds. And of course, when the new event happens, Bob can say, is this a good time for a conversation? Am I conscious? Is the player not in dialogue or combat? Is this, and if not, reset it to happen. Check in another 30 seconds. And during that time, it's not checking. It's the queue is set up so every time the queue is checked, it looks at the front of the queue and says, "Is this something that needs to fire?" If it's something set for 30 seconds from now, nothing happens, and that's why it's very efficient. Now, it may be that the player goes that Bob says, "Hey, can we talk?" And the player says, "No, I don't want to talk about this." Then he can reset the same event and say, "Have it happen in 2 hours or 2 days," meaning he's like, and he can even throw something like, "I'm not happy with this. We're going to talk about this eventually," and then he will talk about it later. What I love about this, it's efficient. It lets that that event's gonna eventually happen, and Bob's gonna bring it up again, which is what he said he would do. But it's very efficient programming wise. It's also really cool because since anyone can set an event, the programmers are probably sending the creature dying event. The script that the narrative designer probably put on Bob listens for those events, and then when they get them, sends their own event saying Bob saw the player kill a cysty pig, which is a very specific event that only that narrative designer is going to know about and care about, but has a different set of data on it and gets put in for a different time period before it will come.
Well, I agree with what Tim said, which was, to make this as non-programmer friendly as possible, so that if a narrative designer wanted to make a new quest where it tracks that pig that was killed or the number, that it's very easy for the narrative designer to do that without any programmer help. It's just, I just find the ID for the animal, I throw it in on kill, queue amount, or this is the amount that the threshold that it needs to reach in order to trigger this event, and the event that it triggers is it adds this quest to the queue. So next time the player enters their ship or their base, right, that this character is going to want to talk to them about what they did. Make it as simple to handle as possible for designers and people that aren't programmers.
That's what I love about all this. Real quick before I end, let me talk about what you should react to, because if you have good programmers, there's events being thrown for all kinds of things. And I mentioned it. It's like you picked up an item, you dropped an item, you wore an item, you sold an item, you talked to this NPC, you killed this NPC.
Think about like actions in the game, like verbs. Like what can the player do when they have this item, or when they can see the item, they can get near the item, they can pick up the item, they can walk away from the item without picking it up. There's different ways that you can manage this, right?
Creature, you discovered a new map. All these things, are things that can trigger a script. It's usually the narrative designers who decide what they want NPCs and companions to react to based on their idea for that character. What does that character like? What does that character hate? Based on those likes and dislikes and this big list of things they can react to, that's what the NPC can now react to. Did the player put on that evil-aligned helmet? Did the player finish that quest by denying the NPC? Like, I found that item you wanted, but I'm keeping it for myself. Did they kill this NPC who's a prominent citizen, maybe a friend of the NPC that wants to react to it? These are all things that can be baked in to the reaction when you see the NPC can see an event occur and decide right then, do I want to react to it? And then, of course, create an event or set a variable or whatever, however you do it, to make sure you come back and mention it.
Yeah.
I think that is the most straightforward way I can describe how, at least in all of my games, our NPCs and companions have reacted to things the player has said and done. So, Alice Little, I hope this answers your question.
It's a very good system. I know I didn't really react to some of that, mainly because I was listening, but it's very scalable, and it really makes me want to do a similar system for Cauldron Chronicles, but we can do it, but I feel like I'd want to prototype it and what kind of information we would want to be remembered. But we kind of do some of that, right? Like, we do inventory checks for the player, or we can do inventory checks for the player. Or even things that the player has said to other NPCs, or decisions that the player has made, but it's not handled very elegantly by like some overarching system. So I like it. It would be very advanced. And the more that I think about it, the more it's like, no, this is like a 1 month system that needs to be prototyped. But I think I could benefit from doing it because it's something that we would be able to use in every single game that we make if we want to do micro reactivity, and it's a system that we would want to be very modular, very scalable. So if we want to quickly add a new thing that gets stored, we can do it pretty easily. I have a tough time thinking of some of the data and how it would be stored, but it's a really cool system that you could basically make your games, especially if you're like an RPG developer, like we would be. You could build games around this system and keep expanding and deepening it. I'm glad we watched this video. It gives me a lot to think about. And I hope you guys liked the video too. There's the link in chat to it. And if you're watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed that one. That was a very, very interesting one. Thank you, Tim. I don't know if you watch my videos, but if you do, thank you for making that. That gives me a lot to think about as a systems designer. Especially, I'm going to go home and I'm going to think about the system. I love it too much. I really, really do. All right. If you're watching YouTube, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye, YouTube.